part one of this video, I was talking about my how I got into kinesiology and natural therapies and flower therapy, and that covered the years 1996 to 97 when I went out and studied, why I went out and studied, and then eventually building up an accreditation to become a licensed kinesiologist in Australia. In this video I want to talk about what happened after that, because right from day one, when I went out into practice and started seeing clients, my career started moving in a whole new direction, and that happens, I guess. And it was basically the first sort of move in a new direction came from one of my first clients. This was a girl who came to see me for probably 12 months to 18 months, roughly about that time. Once a week she would come to see me for a session, a consultation. And this was a girl who was from a very rough part of Melbourne where I live. Lots of drugs, lots of crime, low socio-economic sort of demographic there. Like lots of violence and things like that. And this girl came to see me, and my first impressions of her was that she looked like a China doll. This was a person who had a very pale facial complexion. She was very vacant, so obviously she had a history of substance abuse, taking drugs and that sort of thing. Cut a long story short, over the weeks of seeing her, we would have amazing breakthroughs in the clinic. And then when she came to see me the next week, it was almost like we'd done nothing in the work. We were back at square one, and she was always quite shell-shocked, and it would take me quite a while to bring her out of herself and sort of get her back sort of grounded and present. And so in that hour time frame that she was with me, I saw amazing improvements, but it just didn't seem to stick in the real world. Obviously she went back to an abusive relationship or whatever it was, and was taking drugs and that kind of thing. And she really stood out in my mind as a tough case, and there was a lot going on with her. And so I really started thinking about what was going on and how I could actually improve my technique and my delivery of the therapies. And so time went by, and I referred her on to several other sort of specialists, like nutritionists and things like that. And she stopped coming to see me. And but the example stayed with me. And what I realised is that one of the biggest problems that I had is that I worked in a clinic. And what I mean by this is that she would come to see me as the client, and she expected me to be the professional therapist who gave her healing and gave her basically her money's worth. And the only real effort she was putting in was coming to the clinic on time and paying her money. And right from the early days of my working, I realised this kind of client, I didn't want to see them, and it just didn't work. The client had to be fully engaged in their process and willing to work. And I sort of saw this tendency in other clients to sort of come in like broken emotional people and expect the therapist, myself, to fix them. And so I ended up becoming very disillusioned with working in a clinic, and I eventually phased it out. I started seeing clients in a very different way, and I'll talk about how I got to that in a moment. But this one particular case, there was a number of things about her that really changed the way I looked at clients and worked with clients and what I expected of clients. She taught me to expect professional clients and professionalism from my clients. My clients could expect a certain level of professionalism from me, that I know what I'm talking about and I know what I'm doing. But in return, I also expect a certain level of professionalism from my clients, and that they're there to work and they will do the things and the homework that I gave them. So getting back to how I changed my working style, around about the same time that I was seeing this girl, I was started to seeing people on the other end of the social demographic, the rich people of Australia. I became good friends with the rock band Midnight Oil and the friends and the crew on that band. And so slowly I started building up a clientele in Sydney, Australia of very affluent musicians and artists, recording artists. And very different mindset in these people. And I realised that this girl who came from a low socioeconomic background, hard upbringing, that was one kind of person you could see. But up the other end of the spectrum was people who didn't have emotional problems. What their problem was is that they wanted to grow their businesses, or they wanted to grow their careers, and they didn't know how to actually, overcome certain barriers with growth. So these were people who were very proactive, very positive, and very easy to work with, had a good, positive attitude, and made my work very simple. And I'll never forget this one woman that I worked with. She was a friend of these musicians that I was talking about, and her history, her backstory was that she fled Vietnam round about the time the Vietnam War was ending. She was a child. She was relatively a child. She was in her late teens. She had a baby, a 6-month-old baby, and she was a boat person. So she came out to Australia by boat. The story she described of that was the most horrendous. I won't repeat it here, but basically fleeing a war-torn country because she was fleeing from the north of Vietnam, the communist occupation, and her travels out to Australia, and her story of how she set up in Sydney, Australia, and then went on to create one of the biggest businesses. I won't tell you what business she set up, but a niche business, and became very rich and very affluent and very successful. And so what I had here was a person who had a very, very tough upbringing, compared to, probably worse than the person who came from the low socio-economic, the China doll girl that I was talking about. But this person had fled a war-torn country and risked her life to come out to Australia by boat, could have been killed during that journey, came out and became a success story. And one of the things, noticing the mannerisms of people who are successful and quite wealthy monetarily, it was very interesting, her attitude towards business. And I learnt quite a lot from her, and actually I took a lot of my business model from this one particular lady. One of the things she did is that she didn't have an office. She had a big business, but she didn't have an office. And she said, number one, I don't want the overheads of paying rent for an office. She goes, number two, an office really bores me. I would get bored having an office. And number three is, why would I have an office when I can have this view? And where we were at the time, we were at her favourite cafe, which overlooked the Sydney Harbour. And basically what she did every day, she came to her favourite cafe, spread out her papers on the table, had her laptop, and did her business in this particular cafe with this beautiful view of the Sydney Harbour and the bridge and the Opera House. And I thought, wow, this lady really knows how to run a business, and she knows how to live. She's combined the two quite well. A very smart lady. And so I thought I would do the same myself. So when I came back from those trips, I went and saw her a number of times, consulted for her, and came back and basically scrapped my clinic. I gave up my kinesiology practice, and I just went to more of a talk-based style of work where I could just meet people in public in a cafe somewhere, or even at their home, or sometimes even at my home, depending on who they were. And I really like this for a number of reasons, because meeting somebody in a real life location is very different to meeting someone in a clinic. people are very different. When there's life going on around you and when people are still engaged in life, they talk about different things and they don't go into the broken doll sort of mentality that a lot of people do when they go into a clinic, you know, the sort of fix me mentality. Real life environments, very vibey, very alive and very upbeat. So a lot of the work that I started doing with people wasn't so much about their emotional issues, it was to do with their projects and the things that they wanted to achieve in life. And so from the very early days of those first clients that I had, the lady in Sydney who was very rich and affluent, and the girl who was a China doll, they moved me out of the traditional clinical model and into more of a personal and engaging form of therapy. I understand that a kinesiologist needs a massage table and need a clinic to work from, but I soon realised that I wasn't a kinesiologist, and I basically quit lying to myself. So I let go of that tool, kept up my flower therapy and my flower therapy research, took that style of working plus the more direct one-on-one sort of way of working with people, chatting to people directly about their projects and their goals and what they had planned. That was more exciting to me, and so I basically tailor-made my clinical style around my personality rather than a whole bunch of tools that I'd gone out and learnt. And so what I found was as time went by, I moved purely into project management. And the reason I call my work this instead of healing or emotional, healing emotional issues or that kind of thing, is because when you just work with internal stuff, it doesn't necessarily translate into real-world action or real-world progress. What I found was a lot of my clients were spinning their wheels. They would have amazing emotional shifts and changes and insights and all that kind of lovely stuff, but their lives pretty much remained the same. They still had the same physical hurdles and the same barriers and the same goals, year after year. They hadn't actually gone out and achieved those goals. And so I decided to move away from all of that emotional stuff and integrate it into a more proactive and a more life-focused way of working. So basically the way I work with clients now is that I expect them to do work. If a client comes to see me and expects me to fix them, basically I tell them that's not how I work, and I either correct them in their view or I let them go entirely. I'm not interested in working that way anymore. I'm interested in working with people who want to become leaders in the community or who want to actually lead and live the lifestyle they have dreamed of. I'm not interested in dreamers. I'm not interested in people who have got pipelines full of plans that they never actually live. I'm interested in people who actually go out and do the real thing. And so my work these days is basically working out what a person's real goals and real objectives are, what they want to do, whether it's write a book or have a family or whatever it is, and then bringing that out of the mental realm and putting it into the real world in real terms. And so basically what I do is I work out the steps they need to take in order to complete that goal and to work towards it and work to complete it. I'm there to oversee the project. I basically monitor their mental and emotional state to keep them on track, iron out any stray emotions that crop up, any sabotage patterns, all that kind of stuff. And I do that kind of work in the background while they focus on 100% on their project and getting the work done. And so people come to see me basically these days to crack the whip, to make sure that they are progressing towards their goals and that they're making tangible gains in their life and not just some sort of fooling themselves mentally and emotionally that they're sort of making progress because they've had some sort of heavy catharsis. That's not real progress. So with my clients, they come to see me, I clarify their goals, sort out what they want to do, and then set deadlines. And I find that setting a deadline, setting a date on a calendar is one of the best techniques to actually expose somebody's fears, anxieties, and hurdles. Literally within the first 5 minutes of setting a date, and a realistic date on a calendar. Say you're writing a book, well, I say I expect a draft on my desk of that book within 6 months, which is a fair enough time frame to write a book. But what I find is that even though I've created a date 6 months in the future, right there and then, in getting someone to commit to their own plans, exposes all of their stuff and makes my job easier in ironing out the creases and making sure their thinking is focused on the goal and they can actually follow through on their plans. So that's the way I like working. That's the only way I will work, because I'm not interested in working any other way. And I find that that's the way that works the best. And so I'm just noticing this beautiful day going on around me while I'm talking about being inside a clinic. Now that I've escaped the clinic, I kind of enjoy the fact that I'm outdoors a lot more and working with people in a way that I want to work with them. And I'm just noticing that, I think right now I want to finish this video and get back to doing some gardening, seeing as this is autumn and late autumn, and we're having a beautiful sort of almost summery day here in Melbourne. So I think I'll leave it there, and I'll talk more about my theories and the way I work with people, and just some of the things that you pick up from your clients, what you learn about people. And when you see the same person repeatedly, you sort of pick up on the patterns and sort of where people's stumbling blocks are. And it's very interesting that no matter what somebody comes to see you for in a clinic, it boils down to very few things. And I'll talk more about those sort of tricks and tips later in some other videos, because it's quite an interesting topic when you realise that human beings suffer from very few things. And so I'll leave it with you for now. Thanks for watching. If you haven't before, subscribe down below. That's I always love some new subscribers on my channel. And if you like this video, share it with your friends, because I like talking and sort of sharing information and talking about the real stuff that goes on with self-development and especially sort of setting up shop as a natural health therapist. So I'll leave it there, and thanks for watching. Bye for now.